My parents think it's selfish for me to go to university when that money could be used for my sister's wedding, my sister who dropped out of school. But I show them just how selfish I am when I go to live with my grandparents. I'm 18, in my final year of high school, and my plan is to go to university. It's what I've been working toward for years. I stayed focused on getting a 4.0 GPA and getting into a good university, but that hardly matters in this family, where academic achievements count for less than a wedding. My sister Ariel is 24 and has had a very different life path. She dropped out of high school at 16 and has worked in retail ever since. A few months ago, she got engaged to her boyfriend of 8 months, and my family has been in a frenzy over the wedding plans. So I should correct myself and say academic achievements matter less than the wedding of two people who barely know each other. And don't even get me started on dropping out of school. Here's some context. When I was born, my paternal grandparents created a college trust fund for me. They did the same for Ariel. When she dropped out, her portion was supposedly set aside for future projects, though no one ever clarified what that meant. I never paid much attention to it growing up, but now it's front and center. Last weekend, my parents called a family meeting. They started by excitedly talking about the engagement and how much they wanted to help her have the wedding of her dreams. Then came the part that completely blindsided me. They suggested I postpone university for 3 years so the family could focus on Ariel's wedding year, saying everyone would be busy with the Little Mermaid's wedding and wouldn't be able to help me transition into university life. Yes, they said that last part. The Little Mermaid is my sister's unflattering nickname for me. Though honestly, it's insulting to the Little Mermaid because my sister looks more like Ursula. This whole nonsense about transitioning as if I'm taking a shuttle to space and need their assistance ties into this. They've been discussing with Ariel using my college fund to help pay for her wedding, which, by the way, has a projected cost of $200,000. Pay attention. Projected. Everyone knows projections are rarely exact, and it will probably cost even more. Their reasoning? Since I'm a good student and will probably get scholarships, I don't really need the money, which is a lie. I'm not getting a full ride. Meanwhile, Ariel needs it more for her dream wedding. They even tried to spin it as a win-win because 3 years would give them time to save again for me while I explore myself, work, and travel a bit. Here comes the shocking news for my parents. I don't want to travel or find myself. I want to go to university. That's what I've worked hard for, unlike spending $200,000 on a guy who probably can't even spell his own last name. I stayed calm in the meeting, but inside I was boiling. Afterward, I drove straight to my grandparents' house and told them everything. It was their money, their trust fund, and I was sure they had no idea about my parents' brilliant plan. My grandmother's face went from sweet cookie-baking angel to a woman painted in shades of green, ready to hunt down an invasive species threatening the population. Entitled parents. There are many, and someone needs to stop them. What I didn't realize until that moment was just how firm they were that the trust was strictly for education. They immediately called my parents and Ariel for an emergency meeting. My parents argued they were busy and tomorrow would be better. My grandparents said now, and now it was. At that meeting, they laid everything out. The trust was legally established, so the money can only be used for education. No weddings, trips, or marital unions with strangers. Then they revealed something I didn't know. Over the years, they had already given Ariel financial support outside of the trust to help her get her GED or start a business. Apparently, she never followed through with anything, and they had grown increasingly frustrated by her lack of initiative. The meeting did not go well for my parents or Ariel. My parents accused me of running to my grandparents and making them look bad. Ariel cried, saying she just wanted to be happy, and I couldn't stand it. Since then, my mom has been sending me articles about how student debt isn't that bad, and that if I can convince my grandparents to release the trust, they will help me transition and we can all finally be happy. My response to that? I'm moving in with my grandparents. They've assured me my college fund is safe and have made it clear you don't negotiate with terrorists. I already submitted early admission applications and I have no intention of putting my plans on hold. Still, my parents won't stop. They keep calling and texting, accusing me of being selfish and heartless for not supporting Ariel. My dad even said I should be grateful for the opportunity to help my sister because it would strengthen our family bond. I told them if Ariel wants to strengthen family bonds, she can start by leaving me alone. But apparently that's not how my parents strengthen bonds. Their method is more like sacrificing one daughter's future for the golden child. That kind of bonding. I have a slight suspicion, very slight, that my parents are playing favorites. Maybe I can feel it in the air. Or maybe it's because they're so aggressively obvious about it, they don't even try to hide it. If my parents or sister had bothered with university, maybe they'd have a better plan than this. Edith. A lot of people asked about my sister's fiancé. He's 26, works as a bartender, and as far as I know, he isn't contributing much to the wedding. $200,000 is an insane amount even for a successful lawyer. Now imagine it for someone who lives off tips. I don't mean to look down on him, but they need a reality check about the kind of wedding they want. If it were a small house party paid by them with a little help from my parents, none of this would be happening. I barely know him. They've only been together 8 months, but I doubt my sister knows him much better. I won't even be surprised when they spend all that money and are divorced within a year, because they realized the relationship doesn't work. Update 1. These past weeks have been a bit intense, but my parents are like that when it comes to spoiling their favorite daughter. The day after my last post, my parents decided to try a new tactic. They showed up unannounced at my grandparents' house where I've been staying and presented what they called a compromise. They proposed that I take a 1-year gap year instead of 3 before starting university. During that time, they wanted me to help plan Ariel's wedding, which, according to them, would bring the family closer together and put an end to all the turmoil we're living through. In exchange, they said they would allow me to keep half of my college fund, and the other half would go to Ariel's wedding, who would also be making a compromise by accepting this. I can only imagine this compromise and how difficult it must be for the little mermaid not to serve caviar to the guests. My grandmother, who was alone because my grandfather was out, shut that idea down before I could even respond. She told my parents bluntly that the college fund was strictly for education, and no matter how many compromises they tried to make, the answer was no. My parents left angry, muttering that I was ungrateful and that my grandparents were interfering in matters they didn't understand. I can picture them arriving at my grandparents' house all excited, thinking their new plan would work, and then walking out seconds later with their heads down once they realized it wouldn't. Shortly after that incident, my acceptance letters started arriving. When I received the notification from my top choice, one of the most prestigious universities with an incredible pre-med program, I was thrilled. My grandparents were just as excited and asked if they could share the news on Facebook. I gave them the green light, thinking it was a harmless way to celebrate. Unfortunately, that post unleashed a storm in my parents' home. Ariel saw the post and had a full narcissistic meltdown where everything revolved around her. It was a poor me monologue about how she can never have anything good in life, claiming that I've always been the favorite child who gets everything. Before she attacks my grandparents for using social media to feel proud of their granddaughter, let me say, this ended up being something positive. Ariel's meltdown revealed more than she probably intended. If you removed all the I and me from her post, which made up about 70% of it, there was actually some interesting information. In her post, she mentioned that she and her fiancé, whom the comments now call Eric because of the movie, had already booked several high-end wedding vendors and venues, putting down large deposits they could not afford. They did this under the assumption they would have access to my college fund. I later found out that my parents encouraged this, assuring Ariel and her fiancé that the money was practically theirs because they were working to make it happen. When my grandparents learned this, they were furious. They called for another family meeting to address the situation. My parents tried to make excuses again until my grandparents said, "Now." They wanted to be face to face, close enough to feel each other's breath when they announced that Ariel's trust fund would be dissolved and that the money would be used for something more important. I don't know exactly what, but considering Ariel has no intention of going to school, there was no reason to keep it anymore. As a result, Ariel's wedding is now on hold, though she still blames me for everything. There is also an ongoing fight between the fiancé's family and mine. The issue is that they seem to believe they have the same entitlement as my parents, and therefore think the bride's parents should handle the majority of the expenses. My parents would love that, but they can't, and they're now trying to get the other family to pay part of it. They can't either, so now it's a battle of entitled people. Some good things have come out of this mess. First, I officially accepted my university admission, and I'm currently working with the financial aid office to get everything in order. My grandparents are handling all the trust paperwork, ensuring it is used strictly for my education. On top of that, several aunts and uncles have reached out to support me after hearing the full story. They've been understanding and even offered to help with anything I might need while preparing for university. I'm probably going to ask them if they can help me transition, or at least explain what that even means. I know the definition of the word, but I'm not convinced my parents know what it means or how they're using it. As for my parents, they are now scrambling to deal with the deposits Ariel lost when the wedding plans fell apart. From what I've heard, they're trying to downscale the wedding into something more manageable, but it will have to be much smaller. I don't think my parents were ever in a position to spend $200,000 on a wedding anyway, because even with the trust funds, they still wouldn't have been able to cover more than that. Edit: I don't know if there is a Sebastian in my sister's life like the crab in the movie. You could argue her cat came close to filling that role, but she eventually abandoned him because she got bored of having a pet. I had to take care of him until he passed away from old age at the sweet, fluffy age of 16. He was actually adopted when he was already a bit older. He slept and ate a lot, but I don't recall him ever breaking into song or starting underwater musicals. Update 2. Those who expected to attend a big, beautiful and luxurious, I wanted to use that word, wedding, I bring bad news. The wedding of the year has officially been cancelled. It is not postponed. It is completely off the table, put to rest, buried 2 meters underground. The series of events that led to this decision still feels surreal, but looking back, it seems inevitable, considering how everything was unraveling. It all began when Ariel's fiancé's family started digging for more information after the trust fund fiasco. Understandably, they were alarmed when they discovered my parents' failed attempts to redirect my college fund toward the wedding. That initial concern led them to ask more questions, and what they uncovered turned out to be a chain of half-truths and blatant lies. Ariel had painted a rosy picture of herself as a small business owner, which turned out to be her very short-lived attempt at selling products for a multi-level marketing company. She also claimed to have some university education, but in reality, she never even finished high school. And here I was, thinking her fiancé's family was just like my parents. When they confronted her about these inconsistencies, instead of admitting the truth, Ariel panicked. She doubled down on her lies, weaving even more elaborate stories to cover her tracks. Naturally, this raised even more red flags for her fiancé and his family. The situation escalated until her fiancé realized he didn't actually know the person he was about to marry. It took him a while. Apparently, being with her for only 8 months wasn't enough time to realize he didn't know her well at all. Who would have thought? Here comes the horror story for Ariel's fiancé. He discovered that she had secretly opened credit cards in his name to cover additional wedding expenses. She used those cards to pay more deposits for venues and services, planning to pay them off once she gained access to the family's money. And by family money, of course, she meant the college funds. The revelation triggered a massive fallout. His family was outraged and threatened legal action for credit card fraud. My grandparents, ever the peacekeepers, stepped in to try to reduce the damage. They suggested a settlement in which the fraudulent charges could be paid in exchange for the fiancé's family dropping any legal action. And if you know anything about my grandparents, you know that didn't actually happen, and instead, they left my parents to deal with it. Luckily for Ariel, my parents had no choice but to intervene and spend part of their savings to cover the costs and avoid a lawsuit. Surprisingly, this seemed to be a wake-up call for my parents, or maybe just crocodile tears. Believe whichever you want. They showed up with tears in their eyes to have a conversation with my grandmother. My mom admitted they had chosen to look the other way because it was easier than confronting the problem. My grandparents said the performance was very convincing, but it needed more tears. They told my parents that enabling Ariel had only harmed her in the long run, and now they would have to face the consequences of their choices alone. While all of this was happening, Ariel went through her own period of reflection, or at least what appeared to be one. After her fiancé left her and the wedding was cancelled, she locked herself in her room for nearly a week. Or at least that's what we heard from enemy territory. Maybe it was part of a pity strategy. Lock yourself in your room for a week, play the role of the abandoned bride, and then emerge as a stronger, regretful, improved version of yourself. I say this because out of nowhere, Ariel asked to meet with me and our grandparents. The meeting started off like an apology tour meant to soften up our grandparents for what was coming next. Yes, she thought she could fool them. Ariel apologized. Not one of those lukewarm, obligatory apologies, but a well-rehearsed one with a wide emotional range. She admitted she had been jealous of me for years, not because I was handed everything as she always said, but because I worked hard and made good decisions. She said watching me succeed while her own life fell apart made her bitter, and she convinced herself she deserved my college fund as a way to balance things out in her mind. It was clear she had put a lot of emotion into the performance. Maybe that's what she was doing during her week locked in her room. Then came the most unexpected part. Ariel looked at our grandparents and asked if their offer to support her education was still available. My grandparents decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. They told her they were willing to help, but only under strict conditions. She would have to start by earning her GED, attend financial counseling to learn how to manage money responsibly, and agree to regular progress check-ins. Furthermore, any funds would be sent directly to the institution she chooses to study at, and would not pass through her hands or our parents. That's when the cracks in her performance started to show. She accepted, but only as a way to buy time and figure out how to get something else instead. I know exactly what to expect next. Call me skeptical, but I don't believe in personal transformations that happen overnight. I don't believe a single week of self-reflection can produce that kind of change. On my end, things are finally moving in a positive direction. My university plans are going smoothly, and I'm getting ready to move into the dorms early to participate in the summer program for incoming pre-med students. My grandparents have been the absolute best during this whole transition. They're doing things and then even more things, to help me transition into my new transition that I am now transitioning into. I'm even enrolling in a transition course at the university so I can get a double degree, one in medicine and one in transitions. Just kidding. But seriously, my grandparents are handling all of this. And for those trying to explain to me that transitioning is a real thing, yes, I already know, like I've said before. My parents simply used the word to make something normal sound dramatic and profound, when in reality, like most people, they just needed to drive me to university, something anyone with a car could do. Every year, thousands of teenagers start university without a spiritual guide. I'll be going without repairing any relationship with my family because I genuinely don't think it's worth it. I'm an adult now and I don't need to live with them. And I firmly believe doing so would be a terrible idea. These people aren't going to change just because they briefly saw the light. They'll lick their wounds and revert back to being the same entitled people in a week, maybe 3 days. In 5 years, if they truly commit to change, maybe. But as of today, it's more likely to see a flying cow than to see my parents and sister become reasonable people. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I know these entitled people too well. Update 3. A few months have passed since my last update, and I promised to tell you how everything turned out. As I close my first semester of university, I can genuinely say it has been an incredible experience. The pre-med program is as demanding as I expected, but it's exactly what I wanted. I've thrown myself into my courses, learning more than I ever imagined, and I'm enjoying every second. I've also been lucky enough to make great friends who share my passions and ambitions. University life has kept me busy, so I haven't been able to post updates or share anything new. Not that much has really happened worth telling anyway. One of the highlights has been getting involved in research with one of my professors. The work is fascinating and has given me a glimpse into the kind of career I hope to have. Family weekend was another high point of the semester. My grandparents came to visit, this time in civilian mode with homemade cookies and all that. It's nice having grandparents who are so multifaceted. They can be sweet and adorable, but also switch into full battle mode in seconds. They loved walking around campus and meeting my friends. They never got to experience this with my dad, so I made sure to give them the special parent treatment when they visited. Now let's talk about Ariel and my parents. If you had told me a year ago that things would be where they are now, I would have believed you. Not only did she complete the GED program, like our grandparents asked, but she also already found another man. I think they've been together 5 months, which is why I can practically hear wedding bells ringing in the distance. She's not engaged yet, but I can see it happening in the near future. I hope they've learned from past mistakes and don't expect my grandparents to cover the costs this time. But then again, humans are the only creatures that trip over the same rock twice. True to their word, our grandparents haven't given her a single cent. I haven't spoken to her in months, probably not since the last time she went to my grandparents' house. But since she broadcasts her entire life online, even though I don't follow her, it's not hard to know what's going on. The Kardashians have apparently commented that she has a problem with oversharing and social media exposure, which says a lot. It also says a lot that she's 5 months into a relationship and hasn't started making wedding deposits yet. I also haven't been in contact with my parents, which some commenters seem to find tragic. They think this is a sad ending for me because I lost my parents and my sister. I don't think we're talking about the same parents and sister, because to me, this is a happy ending. Now, if you imagined we'd all magically forgive each other, share a group hug, and sing Kumbaya in A minor, let me laugh a little longer. I hate entitled, narcissistic, preferential people. I deal with more than enough of them at university, because apparently, not even college campuses are a safe zone from them. So yes, this is my version of a happy ending, if we're calling this the end of my life story. As for me, exciting opportunities have come my way. One of the projects I worked on with my professor was selected to be presented at a conference next semester. It's a huge accomplishment for me, and hey, a free trip. My grandparents might even travel to that city for a couple of days just to see me. They don't really care about the conference itself, but they want there to be familiar faces in the audience. Now that I'm home for winter break, by home I mean my grandparents' house, I can enjoy being part of a non-dysfunctional family. I haven't had to listen to my parents or my sister's voices, and for me, that's happiness. Update 4. Those who study or have studied medicine know how difficult and demanding it can be. I'm not some kind of prodigy who studies a couple of hours before an exam and always gets good grades. If I've made it this far, it has been through effort and by surviving entitled parents who spoiled a golden child sister. I think that gave me the resilience to overcome many difficulties in life, and for that I'm deeply grateful to them, even if I don't think that was ever their intention. That's why I haven't been very involved in my sister's or my parents' lives lately. My sister had another attempt at getting married to the fiancé I mentioned earlier, but when my parents told her how much they could contribute to a wedding that was far from the dream wedding she imagined, she backed out. And when her fiancé realized she was marrying him only for the wedding, and not because she loved him, he decided to leave her. What truly matters is getting married because you love each other, not because of a big party. But that's not the important part. The important part is what came next. My sister, who, if it wasn't clear yet, still lives with my parents, decided to throw a huge party at their house. My parents, stressed from everything that had been happening, decided to take a short trip, just the two of them. That was when my sister threw the party without asking and used my mom's credit card to buy alcohol and other things, totaling $3,500. The crazy part is that my parents didn't find out about the party from the credit card charges, which even included a small ice sculpture elephant in the middle of the living room. But when they got home and saw the destruction in the house, let's just say the melted ice elephant alone ruined the wooden floor. That should give you an idea. One of the bathrooms was clogged, and in another, someone had somehow managed to rip the toilet off the floor and toss it into the hallway leading to the bedrooms. One of the windows had been smashed with a flower pot from outside, and the kitchen looked like a war zone, full of trash, broken dishes, and who knows what else. Honestly, the credit card charges are nothing compared to the damage. The destruction to the house is estimated at around $15,000. Everything broken needs replacing. Some walls need repainting, floors and windows need repairs, and both bathrooms probably need full disinfection. I can't deny it. My sister's party must have been the event of the year. Thank goodness it wasn't my house. I don't know who she invited. Maybe a demolition crew. I found all this out after watching the disaster unfold for 2 weeks, when my parents finally went to my grandparents to ask for financial help. They had already spent a good amount on their mini vacation and somehow returned even more stressed. And my grandparents, being the awful people they are, caused even more stress by telling them they weren't paying a cent. Not only did they refuse, they were practically crying with laughter over Ariel destroying the house that badly. They even asked for pictures. My parents, trying to guilt-trip them, showed the photos, only for my grandparents to laugh even harder. My grandpa even asked my parents to send the pictures to his phone, but my parents weren't falling for that twice. Sadly, I haven't seen the pictures myself, so I just have my grandparents' descriptions. They told me, imagine the worst possible post-party scene. Now imagine worse. And I believe it because my sister has been completely silent on social media for a while. Until they spoke with my grandparents, my parents hadn't made any decisions about my sister, but there must be a limit to how much nonsense they can take. If she were my daughter, I would have kicked her out and sued her until she had no eyelashes left. But that's me, someone who doesn't have a toxic relationship with her. My grandparents agree. Speaking of them, they attended my conference, and it was wonderful seeing their faces in the audience. I'm pretty sure they didn't understand a single thing I presented, but they were there because they're proud of me and love me. If I didn't know better, I'd throw a party with an ice sculpture animal in the middle of the living room to show them I love them. Thankfully for my grandparents, I've developed enough awareness to know that isn't a healthy way to show affection. Yes, a little mermaid ice sculpture would have been more fitting for my sister. And if my thank you party for my grandparents ever becomes a reality, you can bet there would be one. And a talkative crab, too. Update 5. I want to give you one final update because many of you have been speculating about what my parents would do with my sister after she caused them expenses of nearly $20,000. It's actually closer to $15,000. But I don't think that makes my parents feel any better. It's not 20. It's 15. Our lives are much better than we imagined. My parents kicked my sister out of the house and demanded that she pay the money for all the repairs. They had to take out a second mortgage to cover the repairs, and the credit card interest has also been piling up. She'll have to take care of all of that, or at least my parents hope she will. She has a low-paying job and now has to cover a lot of expenses wherever she's living. Unfortunately for me, her radio silence on social media just means the gossip faucet has been turned off. Either way, whether she pays or not, it's going to take a long time. I can't imagine making monthly updates saying whether she paid that month or not. Maybe in 40 or 50 years, when my father has a beard down to his feet and my mother does too because that's how I picture them, and my sister is an elderly little mermaid, I can make a final conclusion saying, my sister paid the last cent of the party when she was in her 60s. But it's more likely she won't pay, that my parents will forgive the debt, and somewhere in the middle of all that, there will be an alliance between robots and artificial intelligence, and we'll all be dead. Anyway, this is goodbye. Maybe we'll see each other again in the trenches of that war against the robots, or in some other one. After all, the war against entitled people hasn't been won yet.